Hey there, Envoys! It's me, Kato, and welcome to a video of tips and tricks for Avowed, an Obsidian RPG that's been a long time coming, and I've been excited as all heck to start exploring something new. And during that exploration, I came across some things I wish I'd known earlier, or I wish the game told me at all, or stopped telling me. Yes, I know I can upgrade my weapons, small gripes aside. If you have your own tips and tricks for Avowed, please leave them in the comments below to help out your fellow Envoys. And here are this many tips and tricks I wish I knew when I first began playing Avowed.
You don't know anything about me, you Adira Nimdut. So maybe go back and take another blessed day sip.
The world of Aora is so easy to understand. An animat could figure it out. You know, animats, vessels created by the Angwithans. No? Joking aside, if you are brand new to the Pillars of Eternity universe, the amount of fantasy terms and concepts that Avowed throws at you can be dauntingly dense. Thankfully, we have an on-call glossary to the rescue. Whenever in conversation with a non-player character, you'll see the option for dialogue history and lore in the dialogue windows. Key terms, entities, and locations will have quick definitions here to get you back on track. How else will you know when Marius's swearing is demeaning or endearing? There you go. Treasure of pretty much all kinds makes a chime sound when you're nearby, and a visible shimmer that can be disabled for immersion's sake if you're into that. But if you hear it but don't see it, look up. From the parts of the game I've experienced so far, nearly all of my exploration into the nooks and crannies of the world is regularly rewarded in the form of materials, storytelling, or treasure. There are numerous ruins, cliffs, and rooftops begging for us to climb them. Just be sure that you've got food active for the inevitable fall damage. Most obstacles in Avowed have multiple solutions. For example, if you got deep water to cross, freezing it with a grenade or spell can create a platform. Or if you've taken one level of fighter, you can charge across at the apex of your jump for extra distance. The game is sometimes extremely generous with the amount of grenades it provides to get through these obstacles. But the more you use other methods, the more of these grenades you can stock up on for thinning the herd in combat instead. Or hoard them like we've all hoarded elixirs at some point. Both food and potions have their use cases. Potions, of course, for when you're in the heat of battle, and food for general recovery outside of combat. Food is also able to give you a backup recovery of health and essence if you're keeping it topped off. So, when you've used an ability or taken damage, the recovery will start as soon as possible. If you're using prepared meals you've collected or cooked up at camp, you'll get far more use out of your ingredients too. In fact, if you haven't given the cauldron much of a look, I'll mention a few here that are nice to keep on hand. Like grog.
Yep.
Which removes status ailments like poison and is simple enough to make, just requiring alcohol and fruit. Just beware of the alcohol that the recipe is using when it comes to ingredients, as my game was trying to use grog to make more grog.
Yep.
For recovery foods, there's stew and mariner's porridge. These recover both health and essence in large amounts, and if you're picking up all the food that you see, you'll have plenty of ingredients to make a bunch of these. There are quite a few locked containers and doors throughout Avowed, and while we don't have a tedious minigame to get them open, instead we need a number of lockpicks depending on the difficulty of the lock, from 1 to, I believe, 5. Lockpick availability is tightened up pretty well, and I found myself never having too many. Whenever you stop at a market or merchant, I strongly advise buying up all the lockpicks you see. It's a bad feeling when you come across a chest with a purple glow and can't open it due to lack of picks. I try not to recommend specific skills because part of the fun in a game like this is the build variety. That being said, if you use your block button for any reason, one rank of parry in the ranger tree will only benefit you. I waited way too long and focused on warrior thinking I'd get a parry eventually. Nope. First row of the ranger skills. Combat can be quite satisfying and impactful in Avowed, and there's lots to play around with. One thing I learned way too late is that power attacks count towards your combos. So if you have a unique weapon that has a bonus effect from a full combo, holding down your attack button for that final strike will be extra spicy. Your action radial isn't just for healing up and quick commands, but can also be used to great effect when it comes to getting your bearings in the heat of a fight. With controller, this is a little easier because you can simply use the other stick, but with mouse, you can get the same camera movement by just holding down the right mouse button. This, of course, helps with companion ability targeting too, without having to pop in and out of your radial to actually hit what you're looking at. You don't need to bust your weapon out every time you want to break a crate. Lots of the breakable items in the game, like rickety crates or urns, can be easily broken by simply running into them. Wooden barricades will still take a stronger touch though. After your journey has begun and you start unlocking new godlike abilities, during the dialogue where you're granted these boons, you can actually refuse them for standard ability points instead. Godlike moves are powerful, of course, but so is a min-maxed build, so it's nice to know the option is there. If you level up and haven't quite decided on what to spend your points on, it's okay to wait until you reach the next threshold for new skills. There is also the respec option, which is always there, but requires some coin to do so and can get expensive the longer you wait and the higher level you are. Avowed has unique items galore. I'll be real with you, I missed this. The wonder of finding something truly one of a kind, not some randomly generated loot with nothing special to learn or experience. A lot of quests, bounties, dungeons, and treasure maps will reward you with something worthwhile in the form of a unique item. Unique weapons and armor can be broken down into powerful components to enhance others too, but this of course is only recommended if you're desperate for materials and have unique gear that you're absolutely sure you won't use. Speaking of uniques, while unique armor can have its quality enhanced, like other gear, unique weapons can have their enchantments modified via the enchanting station at camp. You can do this whenever you're at camp and have the monster parts to do so, which you can get by exploring the world and slaying various beasts. Each unique weapon starts with an already powerful enchantment, well, most of them. But when viewed at the enchantment table, it branches to two choices that improve or adjust existing effects of the item. The Horse Cutter, for example, by default comes with a stun effect when you pull off a full combo, but it can be enchanted to improve into bleed accumulation and an area of effect at the end of a combo, making it an excellent berserker weapon. Just bear in mind that these enchantments are irreversible once you decide to do them. With some of these, I actually recommend saving and experimenting if you're unsure. Treasure maps are a great way of finding some solid unique gear or totem pieces for the various totems you can collect for in each zone, if you have a good eye for illustrations or mind for riddles. These maps are not required to get the treasure, however, and you can stumble across these treasures at any time, so if you're showing up with prior knowledge, you can just go and get the item whenever. I didn't find this exactly clear until I started messing with elemental weapons, but there is a difference between plus 10% shock damage and 10% bonus shock damage. If it says plus 10% or plus whatever percent elemental damage, that'll only work for existing elemental damage coming off of you. But if it says bonus shock damage or fire damage or ice damage, that means you get additional or bonus damage in the form of that effect. A quick way to check if you're dealing the damage type in question is just to hit a breakable object. If there's colorful bursts coming off of your strikes, that means you're dealing an elemental effect. If it's blue, it's lightning. If it's red, it's bleed. If it's orange, it's fire. If it's green, it's poison. Just a quick way to check if you're doing an element or a status without having to hunt down enemies. Don't sell those weapons and armor just yet. You can break down weapons and armor at any time by holding this prompt, while in your inventory, which will give you upgrade materials for the things you do use. To the previous tip, this will of course free up inventory too. One caveat to this though is to ensure that you're comfortable with the gear that you have before you start doing this. Usually it's a good idea to keep a spare of each item you might use until you've gotten to a higher gear quality. Say for example you reach fine quality with your weapon, it's easily going to outclass any common weaponry, so that's a good point to do some mass breakdowns. Not selling crafting materials was going to be one of my tips, but that just got patched as I was editing this, so ignore that aspect. But I will say that upgrade materials can be upgraded themselves, but it doesn't become obvious until you start approaching the second area. The crafting table will let you upgrade lower level materials, common materials, to fine and onwards. Once you've hit the next quality tier with any piece of equipment, common to fine, for example, the next tier of crafting recipes for materials will also unlock. Because most items are useful, the idea of getting some coin tends to fall to whatever you scrounge up from corpses, chests, and the various precious gems to sell. This is probably to help incentivize a player taking on bounties and main missions to fill their pockets instead. Sometimes you can choose to take bribes or squeeze more funds out of an NPC, but you might also sacrifice a unique reward in some cases. I will say that when I got about halfway through the second zone, I had plenty of money and didn't need to spend it on much besides more lockpicks and maybe some upgrade materials. I'm only speaking for myself there though, and I'm someone who meticulously explores every nook and cranny of the map. So I'd actually love to hear cost mitigation for those of you who don't. Now I open the floor to all of you. What have you learned about Avowed? What do you wish you knew earlier? Leave a comment below to help out myself and your fellow envoys. If you found this video useful, entertaining, or both, please do whatever you see fit to show that. Among the ways you can is by supporting on Patreon, like the gorgeous Godlikes on screen now, including Wasteland Legends, Sven, and Rose. Thank you so very much for watching. I'm Kato, and your expedition to the Living Lands awaits.